Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi is in New Delhi for the BRICS Foreign Ministers Meeting. Now, his visit comes at a time when global tensions run high. The Iran conflict ignited by US and Israel, energy security concerns ringing around the world, and the US-China high-stakes meeting in Beijing. Now, Araghchi used the occasion to urge BRICS members to jointly condemn the US and Israeli strikes on Iran. He framed Iran's military and diplomatic resistance in explicitly ideological terms, positioning it as part of a broader struggle against declining Western hegemony, lashing out at a rising global South.
These crimes and the Western silence they are met with can only take place if there is a sense of impunity. That false sense of entitlement must be shattered by all of us. Iran, therefore, calls upon BRICS member states and all responsible members of the international community to explicitly condemn violations of international law by the United States and Israel, including their illegal aggression against Iran, a member of BRICS, prevent the politicization of international institutions, and take concrete action to halt warmongering and to bring an end to the impunity of those who violate the UN Charter.
Well, Abbas Araghchi's meeting with Prime Minister Modi and External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar took place in the backdrop of the BRICS Foreign Ministers Summit, a forum for the bloc members to find diplomatic common ground that unify what is referred to as the Global South. So let's start first with what exactly is BRICS? Why was it even created in the first place? Who were the member countries? And more importantly, does the BRICS bloc actually matter anymore? So first things first, BRICS began as an economic grouping of emerging powers: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and that later also included South Africa. Now, in fact, the term BRIC was first coined in the year 2001 by Goldman Sachs economist Jim O'Neill, who predicted these economies would dominate global growth in the future. But after the 2008 global financial crisis, the idea evolved into something much bigger, a geopolitical platform meant to challenge Western dominance. Well, the first BRICS summit was held in Russia in 2009. The core idea behind BRICS was simple. Its members believed institutions like the IMF and the World Bank were too heavily controlled by the US and Europe. Now, the new grouping wanted more influence, more representation, and an alternative voice for the Global South. The bloc also aimed to strengthen trade between member nations, reduce dependence on the US dollar, and eventually build alternative financial systems. Now, that's something that continues to irk US President Donald Trump even now, but more on that perhaps sometime later. The alternative financial system also led to the creation of the new development bank in 2015, often called the BRICS Bank. But a BRICS currency is still something that swims in the realm of imagination, given the political divergence of the member countries themselves. Now, in recent years, BRICS has expanded significantly. Today, the bloc also includes Iran, UAE, Egypt, Ethiopia, and Indonesia after they formally applied for membership. Saudi Arabia, though, is yet to officially join the grouping. On paper, BRICS looks incredibly powerful. Together, BRICS countries account for nearly half the world's population. Economically, they represent roughly 35 to 40% of global GDP in purchasing power terms. And with countries like Russia, Iran, and the UAE inside the bloc, BRICS now includes some of the world's biggest energy producers as well. But cut to present day, why does this meeting of BRICS foreign ministers in New Delhi matter so much? Well, first, because the Iran conflict is now testing the unity of BRICS like never before. Iran wants BRICS to take a stronger stand against the US and Israel. But the problem is, BRICS is deeply divided internally. India and China, for example, are strategic rivals. Iran and the UAE have competing regional interests. Russia is still under Western sanctions, and India maintains close ties with the US. Now, that makes consensus extremely difficult. This is why the New Delhi summit is being seen as a major diplomatic stress test for the bloc. Now, India is trying to walk a delicate diplomatic tightrope. New Delhi wants to maintain strong ties with the West while also preserving relationships with Russia and Iran, as well as managing tensions with China. At the same time, India is directly vulnerable to rising oil prices, shipping disruptions and inflation risks linked to the Iran conflict. Now, the expected outcome of the BRICS Foreign Ministers Meeting in New Delhi is likely to be a carefully worded joint statement that attempts to preserve unity within the bloc despite deep internal differences over the Iran conflict and wider global tensions. India, as chaired this year, is expected to push for consensus on issues such as reform of global institutions, protection of energy security, expansion of trade in local currencies, and strengthening the voice of the global south. Now, Iran, however, will seek stronger diplomatic backing against the US and Israel, while Russia and China are also expected to criticize Western dominance of the global order. However, because countries like India, Brazil and UAE are unlikely to support an overtly anti-West position, the final outcome will probably avoid directly taking sides. Instead, the summit is expected to focus on broad calls for dialogue, stability in West Asia, uninterrupted global trade and energy flows, and greater multipolar cooperation, while also laying the groundwork for the larger BRICS Leaders Summit scheduled in India in the month of September this year. So, now, more fundamentally, does BRICS even actually matter anymore? Well, the answer is a difficult one. It's a mix of both yes and no. Well, yes, because the global balance of power is changing for sure. Countries across Asia, Africa and Latin America increasingly want alternatives to Western-led systems. And with China and India inside the bloc, BRICS simply cannot be ignored. But at the same time, BRICS struggles with a major problem. Its members often disagree on the biggest geopolitical questions. There is no common foreign policy, no military alliance, and no unified strategic vision, which means BRICS often appears strongest as a symbol rather than a coordinated geopolitical force. Now, Abbas Araghchi's visit to India was meant for the bloc to hear Iran's diplomatic appeal, and it partly worked. But amid a growing global crisis, the real question is now this: can BRICS evolve into a serious power center, or will it remain a loose coalition united mainly by dissatisfaction with the West?